everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, All In on AI, Strategic and Simple Ways to Put AI to Work for Your Members and Staff. I'm Marianne Murphy, Vice President here at the Medical Fitness Association. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce today's presenters. Julie Polovic is a sales engineer too at Daxko. However, she began her fitness career out of college as a personal trainer and Division III track and field coach. She's also worked for Power Wellness as a fitness specialist, group exercise instructor, and personal trainer, advancing to leadership positions, including personal training manager, fitness and group exercise director, and executive director. In October 2021, Julie joined Daxko Club Automation as a customer service advocate, moving up to sales engineer role and then being promoted to her current position in January 2024. Caitlin Armstrong is a technical sales engineer at Daxko, where she partners with health and wellness organizations to leverage technology in practical, strategic ways. Caitlin focuses on helping medical fitness and wellness organizations adopt new technologies with clarity and confidence, streamlining work operations, supporting staff, and enhancing the overall member experience. She is passionate about simplifying complex systems and helping organizations implement solutions that create measurable and sustainable impact. Now, today's webinar is being sponsored by Daxko, powering fitness and wellness organizations with software that streamlines operations, simplifies payments, and boosts member engagement so you can grow with confidence and deliver more impact. Now, as we move through today's webinar, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat or Q&A panels, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar in the order they were received. Okay, Julie and Caitlin, take it away.
Thank you, Marianne. We appreciate the time and the opportunity to do this for you guys. Really looking forward to this time. Like Marianne said, I have Julie with me as well as myself, and we're going to walk through a little bit of AI today. Let's talk about a little bit of what we're going to go through. We're going to level set on what AI actually is, because there's tons of noise in the industry today and a good bit of misinformation out there. We'll walk through real use cases across the member journeys and operations, not just hypotheticals, but things that you can actually use to implement in your day-to-day life. We'll spend some time on how to use AI effectively, because the value really comes down to how you interact with it. And we will talk about guardrails, especially around privacy and compliance, which we know is critical in your environment as well. And then we'll close with a simple game plan so you leave knowing exactly where to begin. Before we go any further, we want to get a quick sense of the room. So in the chat functionality here within Zoom, we have a quick question. Take a second to answer this poll. How often are you utilizing AI tools or automation in your fitness business today? There's really no right or wrong answer here. If your answer is never, that's completely fine. If you're just experimenting occasionally, that's great. And if you're already using it regularly, that's helpful for us to know as well. AI engagement can mean very different things to different people. And for some organizations, it's still just out of curiosity. For others, it might mean using ChatGPT once in a while to draft an email. And for others, it might be showing up in day-to-day scheduling, marketing communications, or workflow management. So this just gives us a great idea of where everyone is starting from. Let's see. We have a pretty good mix of regularly sometimes, so that's really encouraging to see that it's all across the board. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm really encouraged reading that. Thank you for sharing. We're going to shift a little bit. Let's talk about what AI actually is and how to think about it in a more practical way. In this next section, we are going to break down AI in plain terms. So no jargon, no complexity, just a clear way to understand how it could fit into your world. But before we do that, it's important that we level set on why this matters and why it matters now. The reality is this isn't something that's coming someday in the future, something that's far off. It's already here and it's happening and it is rapidly evolving. Across the fitness industry today, operators are already using AI to tackle some very real challenges, such as staffing shortages, retention and engagement, as well as gaps in conversion, just to name a few. And the adoption numbers also reflect that shift. We're seeing 88% of clubs are planning to adopt AI by 2026, and 26% have AI-powered equipment already on their floor, and up to 40% are using AI scheduling and workload management tools today. You see, this isn't early stage experimentation anymore. This is something that's becoming a part of how clubs operate day in and day out. So let's simplify this a little bit. When we discuss AI and talk about it conceptually, we're not talking about something abstract or futuristic. At its base and at its core, AI is just software that's been built to do a handful of things exceptionally well. It can recognize data patterns, meaning it can look across large amounts of information and identify trends or signals. It can predict outcomes. So based on what's happened before, it can suggest what's likely to happen next. It's really great at generating content, such as writing emails, summarizing reports, creating responses, and it can respond in a natural language, which is why you can interact with it conversationally instead of clicking through the systems. But instead of thinking about all of that separately, because it is a lot to think about, there's a much simpler way that we can think about AI, especially within your environment. Think of AI as an operational assistant, an assistant that helps clear the path for your team, not by replacing what they do, of course, but by removing the friction around it. So with that framing in mind, let's take a look at what that actually means and how works get done day to day. Right now, most gyms and studios do run on clicks. So think pull a report, export some data, and follow up when someone gets around to it. Your referrals pile up, member questions get answered, of course, but sometimes just not in the same way every time. That's where things can stand today. Now, let's think about that on the reverse. Let's flip that. What if a missed session triggered an outreach automatically? What if a referral got a response the same day without anyone having to remember to send it? That'd be awesome. What if every member's question got the same answer every time and instantly? That's the difference between chasing tasks and responding to needs. And that's where the real efficiency comes from when utilizing AI. And when that shift can happen, it changes what your team is actually doing with their time, because what your team brings can't be automated. The relationships, for example, the coaching, the critical judgment, the kind of decision making that requires experience and a human in the loop. That's the core of what makes medical fitness beneficial and what makes medical fitness centers work. And AI doesn't replace any of that. What AI does is handle the layer underneath it, the drafting of the messages, the organizing of the information, identifying who needs that outreach, and triggering the follow-ups. The repetitive works that consume time without requiring expertise. I like to think of it this way. AI takes the routine off of your team's plate so they can put their energy where it actually counts.
All right. Great job, Caitlin. Thank you for that setup there. So now you guys, we've kind of got that intro. And like she said, great insight from all of you to, have a good mix of where you guys are using it, if you're using it correctly, So I think that's really why we're all here today. So day to day, so, how do we make this information? How do we make this tool practical for us? And how's it going to show up? How's AI going to show up in our day to day? So our approach here for the next few slides, you guys, we're going to start from the perspective of that member journey right from when they start. So really those pivotal first 30 days and really what that impact is going to be there. I know it's a big part for all of us and, certainly, of course, medical fitness, I think all across the fitness industry in general. But we want to really focus on, getting them connected and engaged right away so we don't lose them. And then we're going to go ahead and touch on how AI is going to be used in your kind of your operational day to day. Caitlin kind of touched on this a little bit. So really, you guys, as we start to go through these slides, think of this in the perspective of your center, your members, what you guys are currently doing, and then maybe some, touch points and refinement that this may be able to assist you guys. So let's go next 30 or the first 30 days. So I would say when that member joins, I feel like we could probably all agree we kind of have that high point of their motivation. Someone's really excited to be there. I know, and as Marianne had pointed out, I've spent the majority of my career in medical fitness. So yes, there's that excitement, but there's also maybe somehow, some way their doctor got them there, or maybe they're coming over from physical therapy. So whether you've got someone highly motivated, ready to go after their goals, or you have someone who is maybe maybe a little bit of a lower point. They just they're trying to work through an injury. They just had a surgery. I know too, I was that very unique experience that we see so many people coming through our doors that have never exercised before. Like, this is brand new. It's not just like, hey, taking on this new thing, but everything is new and kind of scary for them. So in those first 30 days, as we're talking about, the health history questionnaire is a big piece. Getting physician clearance, like making sure all that paperwork, everything else is in order prior to us going ahead and getting them scheduled for that health assessment and equipment orientation if we're offering both those. So one of the key takeaways here is thinking how AI is going to make sure those touch points are not only going to happen, we know they typically, or we hope they're happening pretty consistently, but hey, making sure they're on time, they are consistent, and then they're in a way that also feels personalized. Because again, think of this, a lot of times we're coming from people who tend to go towards medical fitness. They may not be as confident in just exercising in general. So they're looking for that extra layer of support. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide, just kind of breaking down, sort of building out that member journey there. So here's the first 30 days. Caitlin, can you slide it? Or maybe it might be my screen. Sorry, it looks like it's cut off a little bit. Maybe it's okay. Now it looks okay. Perfect. Just want to make sure everyone can see that fully. So, as we said, it's maybe a little bit different approach that you guys have, maybe some slightly different timelines, but we know this is, I would say, kind of a tried and true process that we see, across our industry. And hey, most of this time, things, at least I know I can speak from this experience and even having the opportunity to go into, some medical wellness centers now, some things are still the same. A lot of phone calls, a lot of email follow-up, if we're lucky, getting some touch points in person, but doesn't always happen. So looking at this, what kind of comes to mind for me is remembering having like a backlog of physician clearances that had to be faxed. And it was a matter of like, hey, how long has this been sitting here? We look at those little stamps that are on there. And then we're sending those out. And then we also have to find that time to reach out to someone to say, hey, here's where we're at. Hey, would you mind reaching out? I remember having people where it's like we wouldn't get a response because sometimes, we may not have that, that kind of relationship with that hospital or medical group. And so it might just take that little bit of a push from the member. So it's kind of this very much a group effort, but a lot of very manual processes. So in that, I think of how many missed opportunities do we have? How much lost time? And then as I started talking about the person being highly motivated, or at least, having some, ready to go kind of attitude, that starts to diminish quite a bit. So kind of said this before, but just kind of reinforcing too, even what Caitlin said, really what we want to use is AI is changing, is really just executing these things consistently. We want to make sure no one falls through the cracks, because we want to make sure people, hey, they're going to get that guided experience and they're going to feel like it's that white glove or their hand is being held. Or, for the handful of people who are like, I'm fully confident in what I'm doing and what I'm coming here for, to be able to, let them do their thing, but make sure that they're supported and they're aware of everything that is for them. Perfect. Thank you, Caitlin. So the inevitable, you guys, we all know this one. So fast forward that disengaged member. So whether this is someone that has gone through that process, they've had the connections, they've done their assessment, or maybe for some reason they missed it. I think of how often sometimes this was missed or people push back on it. They found a reason not to come in. I always thought it was, an interesting comment when people would say, hey, we're like, we have this health assessment. Let's get your baseline. And they're like, well, we want to get in shape first. And we're like, well, it kind of defeats the point. But so there's sometimes, we have to, have that opportunity to be able to like make sure they understand and educate. And that's where some of these other pieces can come in too, of understanding, like we said, some of the educational content that may be sprinkled throughout, making sure they understand whether it was during the sales process or in those first couple meetings with them, to make sure that they understand, hey, we want to, find a way that this is going to be, least amount of barriers for you and keep you the most successful. So, but as we talked about, a lot of this process, like we saw on the slide before, a lot of it can be very laborious. So really, we want to, think about not only having that communication with people, but making sure, hey, when someone is not coming in, whether we're looking at the last 30 days, last 60 days, last 90 days, what was ultimately their reason for falling off? Can we look into the data and see what were they doing before they stopped coming? Did they have any visits? Do you see them on a class roster? Do you see them sign for programs? Have they enrolled themselves getting the newsletter? So there's a lot of opportunity there. So we make sure, like, not only are we just saying, hey, we miss you kind of communication, which is pretty typical, is that we're finding out, hey, maybe we found someone who was taking classes pretty well or pretty consistently and then suddenly dropped off. So kind of our job to sort of, find that information. That's kind of working at AI to get that information out and then be able to personalize that communication. Let's go operations and admin. So now the fun part, all the administrative skills. And Caitlin said this before, we'll probably say it a couple times, it's, I think, a concern, a fear, and a legitimate one that people are concerned. Hey, AI is here to take my job. It's here to take my role. What we know is that really, especially in medical wellness, is that we are really our team, whether it's our member services team, it's our trainers, our fitness specialists, our Group X instructors, everybody's responsible for building that rapport. Some of that, like you said, some of the work behind the scenes is what we want to be able to leverage our AI for, because, hey, we don't want to spend time doing paperwork, creating programs, things like that. So some examples here, things for you guys to think about, booking or just any kind of booking or scheduling. So are you maximizing your studio space? Again, I think of very manual processes when we were handwriting in the number of participants in a class. Our Group X manager was taking that information each month and going through. We're doing, kind of digging into some statistics like, average participants, the busiest days, the least busiest days, and then looking across all those classes. So a lot of opportunities here where, again, if you're using a member management system that can collect that data for you, it's there. So there's an opportunity to find, like, hey, how can we make this a much more simplified process? Billing and payments, always a fun one, no matter what, doesn't matter what the type of facility or business, everyone's going to have billing issues. Credit cards getting, that have failed payments, insufficient funds, bank accounts with incorrect numbers. So a lot of things, again, very time consuming, very laborious. Sometimes we struggle with finding that information. I mean, again, I think probably all of us could probably think of experiences we've had, and I've had this throughout my career, where it's like, all of a sudden you come across a member who has not been billed for 6 months. And they're, not usually the ones who are going to jump up and tell you that that's happening. So you're finding this information. So whether it is like making sure the billing is all set up appropriately, we've got valid cards, or I really like this statement here, writing up respectful follow-up sequences. It is definitely a conversation, I think, across any industry. Like, discussing money can be very uncomfortable. We all know too, like, sometimes we want to make sure we want to be sensitive to everyone. We don't want to come across as accusatory or anything like that, or make someone feel bad if they had a declined payment or something like that. So we want an opportunity to help, use that tool to make sure those responses are, as Caitlin said earlier, consistent across the board, but that we're also making sure that they sound like they're coming from us and they sound very professional. And then, of course, reporting. We'll talk more about this later on in the slides, but any opportunity to take that data, if you are able to, whether it's simple as stuff like check-ins, or if you are collecting things like any kind of health metrics. Hey, we're looking at blood pressure measurements. We're looking at BMI, maybe waist to hip, maybe it's body fat, VO2 max. So there's, obviously, you guys all know, there's tons of metrics that we're using in assessments and just ongoing, and we've got more, more great tools and things like that in our back pocket to use. But are we able to take that information and report on it? Are we showing people an impact, whether it's individually or across, the entire membership? And then staff, finally, as well. I think this one to me, again, I kind of going through this and working on this with Caitlin, speaking from a lot of very personal experience here, but thinking of, the just a lot of policies, the amount of time I personally remember taking writing SOPs, very challenging. And as we said, information, we're going to talk about this too, is how much it's changing the responses. I think, again, that sort of stuck out in my mind when Caitlin mentioned that earlier was, are your staff giving the same answers? If someone comes up that asks, how am I supposed to cancel my membership? What is the process for a membership hold? There's a lot of that information that we know sometimes can get lost. It gets lost in the mix. It's a telephone game when it comes to training. So we want to make sure, hey, it's out there and it's easily accessible and digestible for the staff as well. That's a really big piece, because if they are spending time, I will raise my hand first to be like, all right, I probably wrote very overly wordy SOPs because I want every detail, but I'm sure they never got read. So let's find a way to refine that. And then again, however we can maybe use an AI assistant. We're starting to see some groups using that just on their website as, answering a lot of those simple questions. It's amazing. Sometimes recent conversations of groups like, hey, just the phone calls alone. Phone calls at the front desk are taking up a lot of time. And you guys all know the moment they're on a phone call, they're stepping away with someone, they're not interacting with the members. So, what are some simple things about the hours, holiday hours, maybe an upcoming schedule change? A lot of opportunities there that can be filled with an AI assistant. And then again, just looking at the consistency with making sure, hey, we want to make sure everyone has that same experience as far as some of those things of just renewing their membership, having questions, being able to answer things, being able to be taken care of in a timely manner, because those are all things we all know too are going to contribute to people ultimately deciding to cancel their membership. They want to come in, we sold them on a certain type of level of service and experience. We want to make sure that that remains consistent.
Thanks, Julie. We're going to popcorn back a few times today, but now we're going to transition a little bit into prompt building and discussing discussing how you build a prompt. So we've covered where AI can show up, of course, across the member journey, in operations, throughout staff support. The next question I usually get is, okay, but how do you actually get something useful out of a tool like ChatGPT, for example? That's where we're going to talk about that. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in this section. Prompt building is just the skill of giving AI clear instructions. That's all, but nothing more than that. You're not going to be programming anything. You do not need to understand what's happening under the hood. You just need to know how to describe what you want clearly and with a little structure. It's truly less about technology and more about clarity. So when you are building a prompt, there are 5 things that can make the output dramatically better. Role, outcome, audience, tone, format. In other words, who should the AI act like? What exactly do you need it to do? Who is it for? How should it sound? And what should it look like when it's done? You might be asking why the structure is important and why it matters. But if you just type in ChatGPT, for example, write an email or summarize this report, you're going to get something generic. So while it's technically correct, it's just not quite right. And when you add structure, you get something that actually fits what you need. This is the formula that we come back to time and time again because it works. And communication, reporting, training materials, internal documentation, it just works. Once you have it, though, you can apply it to almost anywhere inside a medical fitness organization. Most people do think of AI as a content tool, but that just really scratches the surface of what it can do. If you look across a medical fitness organization, and the use cases are truly everywhere. Member communication, engagement monitoring, reporting summaries, front desk support, staff training and onboarding, program promotion. Truly, 3 buckets cover most of it: communicating with members, making sense of the operational data, and supporting the people on your team. That's why this skill matters. It's not just useful in one corner of the business. It's truly useful across all of your business. And the more comfortable your team gets with using AI and giving AI clear instructions, the more places it starts to show up. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. Here's an idea of a prompt that you could actually use. Notice how specific this prompt is. It tells the AI who to be, it defines the setting, it asks for a nurture flow with a clear goal, a specific audience, a defined tone, and a link that actually fits the use case. Every one of those details shapes the output. Leave them out and you get something pretty generic, but if you put them in, and you will get something that you could actually work with. I do want to call attention to the very last line. It's really worth taking some time to talk about. Asking the AI what else is needed to align with the organization really can shift the dynamic in the conversation. It's not just generating for you anymore, it's collaborating with you. And if there's one thing that you take away from our chat today, it's that we want you to utilize AI as a collaboration tool and not just a generation tool. We really emphasize and encourage, especially internally at Daxko, for AI collaboration internally on our teams and how we work through certain workflows internally. And it's just a big part of what we believe to be important, especially as we move forward. So this actually leads us straight into one of the most important parts of working with AI well, and that is iteration. Most people quit after the first response because you put in something and it gives you something kind of right, but more wrong than right. And it feels daunting to, try again. And you don't really know. I mean, this AI piece in our lives right now is new for so many of us. And it really does take a mindset shift, to think about how to interact with AI. But I want to encourage you to keep trying, because it does get better, and it really can be a huge lift in your day-to-day. The first output is just a starting point. It's not a solution. I encourage you to push back on what the machine does give you back. Ask for a different take. Ask the machine to give you ideas, and maybe in turn give the machine more context of what you're looking for. Tell the machine what is not working. Ask it to poke holes in its own answer. The back and forth isn't a sign that AI is falling short. That's just how the tool works. The more interaction, the more context, the more data, the better it gets, the stronger it gets, the more it learns you and your patterns and how you think. That's a large part of this as well. And the use cases run deeper than most teams realize. A dense SOP becomes a checklist, for example. A policy document becomes a talk track. Static content can actually become something that you use in the moment. And that's when it clicks that this isn't just a search engine, it's a collaborator. It's not something like Google that you just, quick reference. It's something that you can use to support you alongside you. For bigger organizations, that's really where the real gains show up, not from the perfect first drafts, but from teams that learn to iterate quickly and confidently. I will say 80% on the first try is normal, and getting to 100 is a skill not many people do. But it's always worth trying, and I always encourage building of that skill, always growing the knowledge base and always getting better. Once teams do implement this, the next question usually isn't far behind. How do we use this responsibly?
All right, the guardrails and maintenance section here, you guys. So we understand, medical fitness, it's unique. I've always felt that way. I think you guys continue, because the focus really is on that member experience, but also really truly being part of their wellness journey. I think that's particular piece is very important and definitely differentiates us and is a reason why people will come here instead of to a commercial gym in town, to the community center. They know there's something different there. They know that there's something unique and special. So, and again, I've said this before, but your staff is doing the work to build the rapport. AI cannot replace that. So we still need that human element. The goal here, again, we don't want to think necessarily, it's not just having just a faster output. Caitlin talked about that, or like that breaking it down, like, hey, you may have to go through several iterations, but we want to make sure that we're using a way that's AI is going to protect the member trust. That's a big piece. Respect those boundaries, the protocols, the rules of your wellness center as well as your hospital client, and create, of course, sustainable outcomes. We want to be able to measure those outcomes. It doesn't really matter whether it is, their health or wellness outcomes. It's billing, it's sales goals, it's personal training packages, whatever it can be. There's a lot of range here, a lot of things that can be considered. So we want to make sure that we're able to report on that consistently, and that we found that system in that way that's going to make it easier for the whole team. So this is where we're going to start with those guardrails. So perfect. So really three big messages here on this particular slide. So very, very important. Protect that member data and privacy. I shouldn't, it's not just necessarily to medical fitness, but I think there's even a higher level, a higher element of that, Caitlin and I too see in our day-to-day roles here, is that, that's of utmost importance, first and foremost. So, while there's a million different tools out there, making sure doing the research on the right one, that we are allowing the ones that say, hey, we can go in there. It's not going to be disconnected. It's going to have some guardrails in place, but we still need to have those for ourselves as well. So we're not putting in, key member data, whether it's names, it's payment information. I just had an experience recently that Caitlin helped me out with. I was trying to run a report for something, just testing something out, and I'm like, hey, I got back, like this couldn't be done. And she just pointed out, hey, if there's names or any identifiable characteristics in there, like or data, that needs to be removed. So it's just little things like that. And that's, the purpose of being here, because there may be some small things that we may not even think about, because again, we're kind of operating our own little world. But it's very helpful to know those things to make sure that we're making that tool useful. Second, using that AI for operational support. So we talked, this is not the clinical decision making. Like that piece is out. Like that's not part of what we're doing here. We're thinking of all the extra things around it. So it's communication, it's outreach, some scheduling, booking pieces, whether it's reporting, and then operational insights. So for example, I think of this as like, hey, a trainer, for example, might go and use, some tool to go in and say, help me create a workout. So the idea is not necessarily that they're going to create like step by step. Here's the exercise from here to here to here. We know our trainers, our personal trainers, our fitness specialists have, they've got their degrees, they've got their certifications, so they have an idea, but maybe it's more of a tool for brainstorming. Let's get some new ideas. I've been working with this client for a long time. Maybe it's something, if they don't have, the access, the network within, like, hey, having a physical therapist on site or someone that they could, trust in and ask questions. It's still an opportunity for them to be like, hey, I'm going to put this in there just to get some ideas and assist with that programming. It's not going to do it for me. It's not going to be like, here it's done, and we're just like printing these things out and handing them out on the, at the top of this, when everybody enters. So just a great opportunity for just kind of assisting with that. So, using that creativity and just kind of, I'd say, pushing it out a little bit than we're typically accustomed to. And then keeping that human oversight and the data updated. This I'm going to find, as you guys are going to hear this consistently across in the next few slides as well, is that your members and their behaviors and their actions and their likes and dislikes or preferences, those are ever evolving. Whether it's something very small that, hey, they just made a little change and when they come into the club, to something big. They went from, hey, I was only using the treadmill or the elliptical, to now I'm taking, all these classes. I found, these senior fitness classes that are so great. We need to make sure, like, we're keeping that in mind, because it's not stagnant. It's not like, hey, here's the report, here's the end all be all. We have to continue to kind of, test it and reinforce it, because those things are changing quite a bit. So we want to make sure that, hey, it's not just, same thing with policies and everything else that changes, that we are keeping that in mind, but we're also going back and looking into it and updating that information as well. And then, treating AI is just kind of continuation, you guys. Same thing you manage, things change. Again, some of those things get outdated. I think, again, going back to my original example with the big binder, I'm sure everyone had one of those at some point. That definitely dates me here. I've had that called out a few times, but hey, that binder, here's this fantastic 2-page SOP I wrote, 2 years ago. Well, a lot of things have changed. Maybe you realize we put something into place and it didn't quite work, so it's changed. So a lot of times, going back in there and updating all of that, even from, some things with, generating scripts or whatever it might be. As I said earlier, if you've got people coming up the desk and they want to answer, they've got questions for the front desk, and whether that person has been working there for a week or they've been working there for several weeks, hey, we want to make sure that they have, again, updated information. So we're reviewing that, we're testing it, and maybe even having them, hey, if we're going to role play it, like here's the script if someone asks about cancellation, because maybe we have a particular protocol. Someone asks about, getting, a personal trainer. There's a lot of opportunities here that we can make sure that that experience continues to be the same, and we're using that language and everything else consistently across the board. So it's been mentioned before, but again, removing that friction. So, hey, staff has an easy way. They can go back, they can refer to it. And then whoever it is, whether it's yourselves, it's different department managers, member services managers, whoever it may be, are the ones that are ultimately overseeing that and testing those things, getting feedback. Maybe that script didn't go over so well with some certain members. So an opportunity for them to go back in and, just like Caitlin said, hey, what else? How else can we approach this scripting? So a lot of opportunities for us to be able to make those changes.
Absolutely. This last section we're going to talk about is about moving from understanding to action. So not a sweeping AI strategy, not a 6-month roadmap, just a clear, concrete starting point for the next 60 to 90 days. What to pilot, what to bring in, and how to know if it's working. So before we get into this checklist, though, there's a mindset that we probably should make sure we are establishing first. Many organizations are already running on a mix of disconnected processes, aging tools, and a little too much time. Without intention, AI has just become another layer on top of that. And just more noise, more complexity, just more things to manage. But the goal in AI is actually just the opposite. The goal is to identify the right workflows and decide who owns the testing and refinement. Set simple guardrails and measure early, scale what's working. That's the sequence, and it's built around workflows and not around chasing the newest tool and the newest functionality. That's how you can create a path forward to future AI capabilities without adding to the chaos. You build the culture first, and AI supports the vision. I'm going to share a little bit about what that could look like step by step. So step 1, let's pick 1 or 2 workflows. Document how that process works today. Where does it slow down? Where does quality get inconsistent? I want you to define the problem clearly and define what looks good when it's solved. Next step would be test the AI on one part of that workflow. So let's write a focused prompt: role, outcome, audience, tone, and length. Let's run it on a real example and then just review the output honestly and then refine it from there. Third step would be standardize what works. So let's save that prompt, save the approved output, store them both somewhere where the team can find them on a SharePoint or wherever your local share file is. Add simple instructions for when and how to use it, and assign an owner to own the build out from there. And then the fourth and final step, let's roll it out and expand. Put it into real workflows for a few weeks. Track the simple metrics and the time saved, the speed, consistency. Gather real feedback and refine from there. Then move to the next workflow and do the same thing all over. That's really the pattern. It start small, make it repeatable, and just build from there. And once you're thinking in repeatable workflows, you'll start to see naturally where more advanced capabilities fit in. It really hones back to what we were talking about at the beginning in, making sure you are collaborating, but not allowing it to do all of the work, but really allowing the tool to sit alongside you. We really would like to encourage that.
All right, fun part here, you guys. Dynamic segmentation, which I could say is just about automatically grouping members based on real behaviors and life cycle signals. So yeah, Caitlin, if you can see, you guys, this will actually be a little a little video here so you can kind of see like a real life example of, hey, this is where that AI, we're going to move beyond just like, content generation, which I think myself included, a lot of it was like, hey, I need, I'm writing up some document, I'm sending an email, I'm putting together some kind of presentation. So I'm using that piece. But now how can we take the data? Like we said, we know it exists there, but most of it, if you're not already collecting it, that information already exists in your member management system. So how are we using it? So if you guys can look kind of closely, basically they're looking at, I think this AI agent's being asked like, run a list of people who checked in the last 90 days that are not members. So from there, hey, what do we want to do with that information? Like, here's an opportunity on the prospecting side. Could we send them something, invite them to a class? Because maybe we can get more specific. Maybe once they checked in, do we see them doing any other activity? Maybe it's if you guys are, I've worked with a few groups where they're maybe looking at how long somebody is in the, in the wellness center. So there's a lot of different ways. It's just kind of a really basic example. But things to keep in mind is that the real value here is that the segments are updating in real time. So again, member behavior changes, as we mentioned before, mentioned a couple times. So these are not static lists. This is not, something that, hey, it's outdated. The idea is that if we did it today and then we tried it again here in 60, 90 days, even a year later, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us. Like we just know we can kind of gauge that that activity and the behaviors that are, that the members are that they're doing here. So let's go ahead to the next one. And so this is like this the smart sending engine. So another kind of example here, you guys. I think this also has a video of now similar to that. Hey, we're going to take this information and now we're going to go ahead and put that into some kind of communication. Maybe we're going to send out a text. So again, probably all behaviors and actions you guys do now, sending text messages if you have an app and you're using push notifications, or the good old trusty email. Those things we all know are happening now. However, what are you doing if you send out that email and you don't get a response? Again, do we have to go back in there? Are we looking to see who opened the email, who got it delivered? We're taking action there. But now what if we can take it and say, hey, in this scenario here, we're sending out a text message, inviting them to something. Maybe, letting them know about an event. Maybe it's about a promotion going on in the club. If we're going back to some of those people who don't have memberships, for example. And if we realize the systems can detect, hey, they did not respond, like they did not click on a link, they did not go to the next one, let's go ahead and say, let's automatically send a follow-up email or some other kind of action. So there's just a lot of configurability when it comes to these types of things, but a great way that we're not having to manually go through and do these actions. Because honestly, too, if this is more, we're sitting here in a group, a lot of you guys would be like, yes, we do those things. But right now it is extremely manual process, or we had a person that did that and they left, or they got promoted. So it makes it very difficult, or maybe it feels disconnected. Maybe it's not even something done in the center. It's something done at the hospital level. So there's just some opportunities here, you guys, just some real life examples of, making sure those messages too, because, we're pulling in that data, things that they do, things that they're interested in, and making sure those messaging is very hyper personalized, as you guys can see right there. And then last but not least, you guys, really, again, keeping the care human. I think that's all of us can agree. And I think there's no other piece of the industry that this, has the most impact on than medical fitness. But just some things to think about. Hey, it's this future state vision, right? So whether it is, us looking just as an industry in general, you looking at your specific fitness center or centers if you've got multiple locations, but we can see how AI is going to support a lot of different areas. So hopefully kind of a big takeaway here is not just, like we said, it's not just content. So, hey, I want to have a great article about omega-3s or omega-6s or whatever it might be. It's not just that educational piece and just writing up blogs or, social media posts, things like that. There's going to be so many more opportunities where we're going to be able to see again some of that laborious work that we have to do, or some things that are just take a lot of time, whether it's off a person, it's a team, and just making it simpler for them. They're still going to have that information, but now it's going to be much easier for them to report, much more timely, hopefully a little bit less stressful for them. And so again, don't think of it just as isolated as one particular AI function or feature, but that we could also work it in through, whether it's part of that member journey, it's part of the staff, training, front desk, whatever it may be, and then even just behind the scenes when it comes into things like billing, payments, things like that are really important. We still need to make sure those things are being taken care of. So a lot of different elements, for you guys to be able to find ways that, hey, where can we work this in and how can this help our overall business and just the experience from everybody, not just talk a lot about member experience, but also the staff experience as well. So we want to make sure our team members feel supported and that they have just an easier, more efficient way for them to deliver just that, extraordinary customer experience every single time. So last one, you guys. Thank you. I'll say real quick, just thank you everybody for patience there, but we're going to go to questions and Marianne is back.
Awesome. I'm back. Thank you so much. The more I learn, the more it's like this thing just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So we have a couple of Daxko specific questions. Garen wants to know, how do we get this into our club automation?
Caitlin, do you want me to take that one or would you like to?
You go right ahead, Julie.
Okay, Garen, yeah, you're getting a little preview here. And we just a week ago, for those of you that we were out at HFA out in San Diego. So we had an opportunity to have our product team in particular presenting what you saw there. Those are some examples. Our AI initiative here is first and foremost going to come through Engage Pro. So a lot of that, the CRM kind of front end, those are just some examples, and we're continuing to build it out throughout the software as well. We're seeing the scheduling piece. I talked about billing. So those are things that are being worked on as we speak. Some of those things are going to be coming out here, I think, in Q2. So keep an eye out for that, Garen. It's going to be pretty exciting.
Awesome. And again, on the same vein, McKinsey has said that their Zen Planner Daxko doesn't look like this one. The icons on the side are different. Is there another way to implement this into Zen Planner Daxko Engage?
McKinsey, we'll do a follow-up and just check with the product team on Zen Planner, because it's just one of our many amazing platforms that we have. So we'll just make sure that you guys have the most up-to-date.
Awesome. And we have our two experts here. So if anybody has any more questions, go ahead and chat and type them into the chat or the Q&A panel. While we're waiting for more questions, I just want to say thank you so much to Julie and Caitlin for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. All attendees will receive an email with an evaluation link for today's webinar, and it includes a spot to indicate which CEC you'd like to receive. But even if you're not looking for a CEC, we would still love to get your feedback on today's webinar. Thank you again to Daxko Club Automation for sponsoring today's session. To see how Daxko helps fitness and wellness organizations scale and strengthen their communities, you can visit daxko.com. And our next webinar is on Thursday, May 14th, entitled Surgical Strong, a Strength and Conditioning Approach to OR Staff Health and Safety. And that'll be with Gil Spitz of Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center. You can see all of our upcoming webinars on the MFA website at medicalfitness.org. Renee says, great presentation with real industry examples, which is always good to see, because sometimes you hear about these things and it's so theoretical. And so I think getting those real world examples are awesome. And also, if you are visiting the MFA website, you can find information about our upcoming medical fitness summits. The Southeast Summit is actually next week, but there's still time to register. That'll be in Greensboro, North Carolina. The Northeast Summit is May 20 and 21 in West Grove, PA, and that one will actually be at a MFA certified YMCA. It's a little different. And then our Midwest Summit is on June 10th and 11th in Columbus, Ohio. So Julie and Caitlin, I'm not seeing more questions come in first. Kim is asking, what are common mistakes you see organizations make when they first start using AI for operations? Good question.
Yeah. Hey, Julie, if it's okay with you, I can go ahead and take this one. Thank you, Kim. You know, like we mentioned in the presentation, we find that utilization and not giving as much detail and context can really lead to an early downfall and some discouragement from the get-go. I always encourage people, the better your data is, the better your output's going to be. Like with anything, of course, the better the best you put in will be the better you get out. It's the same concept with AI. I just encourage you to shift your mindset in whenever you think about an AI machine. When I say machine, I mean ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, those types of things. But think about it as a coworker. Think about it as a collaborator, like we mentioned, and honestly, think about it as a persona that you are teaching and that you're training and that you are, feeding information into it and investing time into to make your life and your workflow and your business better. And I promise you will reap what you sow. It's just with anything, it takes time and effort to get to the place that you want. But for myself personally, I found that diving into AI and utilizing it in day-to-day processes, both professionally and personally, I have shifted my mindset on how I see things and how I approach things and think about how I could feed it through. And, I really encourage everyone to just really dive in and get your hands dirty. If you have a question about AI or an AI output, ask it directly into the AI and say, I don't understand this, or elaborate this, or how can I make this output better? Interact with it as if it were an actual person right there next to you, because it learns and it gets better over time.
That's awesome. Julie, did you want to jump in anything there?
I think Caitlin covered it. So yeah, she definitely hit all those main points. And I think it's easy enough. I know I've been done it myself, like put in the question, gotten the answer and been satisfied. But learning more and more, just I think like everyone else, continuing to push back a little bit. Like you said, some of those.
Yeah, and like Caitlin said, I mean, it learns from you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets better and better. So
and it is ever changing. The AI landscape, not only in our industry, but in many tech industries and other industries outside of tech, it is ever evolving. It is something that is rapidly changing. And I can even say the AI landscape from 6 months ago is totally different from what it is today. So that's another piece to think of too. I mean, you want to be a part of the journey and learn as you go. So I really encourage everyone to just try and embrace it as much as you can.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're coming up on our hour. I want to thank you again for joining us today. And thank you, Julie and Caitlin, for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. And thank you to our sponsor, Daxko Club Automation, for supporting the Medical Fitness Association. They are an industry partner, so they're supporting your professional organization. So with that, I will say enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks all. Thank you.